Welcome back, everyone, to the World According to Briggs and a compilation video. We like to do these every once in a while where we take all of, let's say, a series that we had and we put them all together in one big video. The reason for this is a lot of people are watching on TV and they used to watch on their phones and their computers only. Nowadays, they're watching on their big screen TV. And according to my Google data, my analytics, a lot of you are watching it and you really like these longer videos. So we compiled a bunch of our videos together and we give them to you in 1 hour long video. Now, this is a series that kind of started the channel. It was very beginning from 2020 to 2021. We did top 10 reasons not to move to each state. I think we started in 2019 actually, but it went over the course of about a year and a half. And it was really interesting. I think towards the end, we'd kind of played it out. There's 50 states and it took a while to get through them all. And people were like, I've had enough of this. So we quit doing some of them. There are some missing. Like on this video, we're doing the Midwest and we're missing Kansas. So as a consolation prize, so people in Kansas don't feel slighted, we've included Kansas City. And before you do, Kansas City is not a state. Check. Kansas City is not just in Kansas. Check. The people of Kansas and the people of Missouri are very different people, even though they're in the same city. Check. I hope that covers it all. But today we're going to start off with Nebraska. And this is part of the reason I think we didn't do Kansas is because Nebraska and Kansas are very similar in statistics and everything. I mean, it's just a different place on the map and the people go by a different name. That's it. Nebraskans or Kansas. I don't even know what they call themselves. Kansans. I think it's Kansans. So you got Nebraskans and Kansans. That's pretty much the only difference. I know if you're from there, you're going to complain. There's a lot of differences. Not really. All right, so we're going to start off today with Nebraska. Let's take a look. What is going on, everyone? Let's take a look at the Cornhusker state, Nebraska. Nebraska is exactly what people mean when they say flyover state. This is also a state of denial. I made reference to this state as being a nice, quiet place to live in a previous video. Had about a dozen or so people try and explain to me that Nebraska goes off, like they know how to party. That's one guy said, we know how to party here in Nebraska. Another guy said I must never have been to a tractor pull if I think Nebraska's boring. My response was, you must never have been to the Whiskey on Sunset in Hollywood, California, or at a beach in Southern California, or even out of Nebraska if you think a tractor pull is exciting. Nebraska is ranked 16th in size, 37th in population. The Cornhusker state was admitted into the Union on March 1st, 1867, making it the 37th state. It's right here in case you don't know. Nebraska is about middle of the road when it comes to population growth in the United States. They had a small growth of about 5% from the 2010 census to 2017. Not a lot of people move in or out of Nebraska. Most of the growth can be attributed to the birth rate. If you're thinking about increasing the Cornhusker population, you should probably watch my top 10 reasons not to move to Nebraska. Number 10. It sucks. Don't move here. It sucks. Number 9. Allergies. The state is filled with farms and open fields. Unless you live in a major city, you probably live next to a farm. This is a reoccurring theme on my Midwest videos because it's a fact. Allergies are brutal. If you don't suffer from them, consider yourself blessed. People like myself who suffer from allergies, there's about 4 months a year that are frickin' brutal. Nebraska's rough on allergy sufferers. One of the worst, I'd say. Springtime is usually a cause for celebration, not if you suffer from allergies. Number 8. It's boring. Don't move here. It's boring. Number 7. Cinnamon rolls and chili. Nebraskans have some pretty funky food combinations. For some reason, they've decided that cinnamon rolls and chili go together. Now, it's pretty nasty if you think about it. You might as well have some cotton candy with the Clamato chaser. And no, the good people at Clamato are not paying me to say that. Now, if you're about to tell me you've never heard of this, you've lived in Nebraska your whole life, and this isn't a thing, and I'm lying, stop typing. I have a couple places that you could find this weird little combination. In Lincoln, Nebraska, you have Cook's Cafe on North 66 and Dudley, and Lead Belly on North 8th and Q Street. Go to their website, look at their menu, you'll find it on the menu. I love when people always tell me that. I've lived here my whole life, I've never heard of that. Well, get out more is my first thing. And second, keep in mind, I wasn't specifically talking to you when I made this video. Number 6, no professional sports. Adding on to the boredom stat, there's no professional sports in Nebraska. No NFL, no NBA, no Major League Baseball, and no NHL. Because of this, you'll just sit at your next door neighbors, dress like a corn on the cob, and root on the Cornhuskers on Saturdays. And Sundays, of course, are taken up by Tornado Watch. They do go big on their college sports. Like I said, the Cornhuskers are big in Nebraska, and apparently so are tractor pulls. But when it comes to professional sports, they don't have anything, unless, of course, you consider Ultimate Frisbee a professional sport. You know, really, if you have to explain to people what qualifies you as a professional athlete, you're really not a professional athlete. I get the feeling they have that conversation a couple times a month. Number 5, it's flat. Nebraska is a very flat state, regardless of what the residents tell you. Their lowest point is 840 feet above sea level at the Missouri River, while their highest point is only 5,400 feet at Panorama Point. Basically, it's a large hill. However, the residents will tell you how amazing the mountains in the state are. Yeah, it's really not a thing. If anyone starts telling you they have mountains in Nebraska, check their medication. Number 4, Republican. Whether you lean blue or you lean red, it's good to know Nebraska is very Republican. The governor, senators, and representatives, they're all Republican. The last time the state voted for a Democrat was 1964, and that was for Lyndon B. Johnson. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm saying that if this bothers you, keep it in mind before you move to Nebraska. It's very conservative Republican. To me, this doesn't matter. I've never cared how anyone else votes. I only care how I vote. But to some people, it does. At least going the other direction for sure. If you read any of the comments of any of the videos I did about liberal states or anything like that, it's filled with poorly written statements about, I would never live in a liberal cesspool like that. What's funny about that is they all say the same thing over and over. It's like I've said before, they must go to a website filled with political comebacks and they just copy and paste them all day. It's the same things. About a year ago, some politicians said that to think global warming is man-made, the hubris of that. Use the word hubris. Oh my God, it's like every single comment was the hubris of this. I've said that before, but it's just ridiculous. It's like they latch on to the new talking point and just run with it. And that goes both ways, not just Republican. Number 3, the weather. The weather in the Cornhusker state can get pretty rough. Like all the other Midwestern states I've talked about, it can be pretty brutal. In the winter, it'll snow for months, and it can be 4 months until temperatures get above freezing. The summers can get extremely hot, above 100, and the humidity makes everything feel even worse and sticky. And yes, they get tornadoes as well. Stop typing. You get them. Nobody believes you when you say they don't. If you haven't seen one, you're probably 11. Number 2, gonorrhea law. Now this one falls under strange laws, kind of. It's just weird. This is mainly an effort to prevent the spread of the disease. However, while you live in Nebraska, if you've been diagnosed with gonorrhea, you may not get married, even if you got the disease from your potential spouse. You gotta get that cleared up before you get hitched. I mean, it's probably a really good idea to do things this way. You don't want your new wife to have that bad doctor's appointment 2 weeks into her new marriage. And trust me, that is an awkward breakfast conversation, I can assure you. And number 1, the middle of frickin' nowhere. Chances are, unless you live in the city, you probably live in the middle of nowhere if you live in Nebraska. The middle of nowhere tends to suck unless you really hate people. I mean, if you really hate people, it's a solid place to be. In Nebraska, there's only 2 major cities, Omaha and Lincoln. And by major city standards, they really aren't. I live in Portland, Oregon, and their 2 biggest cities together are about as big as Portland. And Portland is considered a medium city. Most of the rest of the state is comprised of towns and smaller towns that are all about 5 miles away from each other and are probably only going to have 1 public school, a bar, 1 criminal, a Walmart that's shared between 2 or 3 other little towns, and that's it. This state is a little bit on the sparse side as far as population goes. So if you like having people around, don't move to the Cornhusker state. There's not many people there. Alright, so that's my top 10 reasons not to move to Nebraska. I hope you guys liked it. Hope you got some information out of it. Don't forget all the links below. Click them, leave me a comment, subscribe if you already haven't. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other. Alright, staying in the Great Plains, we're going to take a look at Iowa. I have a bunch of friends from Iowa. Well, not a bunch. When I was in the Army, the first unit I was in, they took people from different parts of the country. So there's a whole bunch of Californians, there was a whole bunch of people from Washington, D.C., and there was a whole bunch of people from Wisconsin and Iowa. Don't know. Oh, Texas also. We had a whole bunch from Texas. And of course, you had a couple from other different places, but that was a bulk of my whole unit. Those states. It was weird. So I know quite a few people that are Iowans and I've been there a few times. Iowa's a great state, but it's not for everyone. That's what these videos were all about. Really not telling you not to move there. They were just about, these are things you should know before you move there. Even though it said top 10 reasons not to move there. Because when we're going to move someplace, your family or something told you it was great. Friends said it was wonderful. Move here. You got a job offer and they're giving you the rose-colored glasses version of whatever state or city you're moving to. They don't tell you the negatives. That's all. These are just things you should be aware of. Let's take a look at Iowa. What is going on, everyone? Let's mosey on over to the middle of the country and learn about the Hawkeye State, Iowa. Iowa is one of my favorite states in this great country. I'm totally kidding. I've only driven through Iowa. One thing I can tell you about Iowa is they should sort of swipe San Diego's old slogan. San Diego used to be known as a great place to be. Iowa should be a great place to pee. Iowa is not only a flyover state, but it's pretty much a drive-through and don't-stop state. This is the type of place where people end up putting down roots. Not because they want to, more like because they were heading to the West Coast, they broke down and didn't have enough cash to fix their 1982 Ford Econoline van. Iowa is ranked 26th in size and 30th in population and was admitted into the Union on December 28, 1846, making it our 29th state. If you don't know where it is, here you go. Now, before we get going, I want to tell you, Iowa's kind of a weird place. They've got some issues like all other states, but one thing they don't have an issue with is their people. Every person I've ever met from Iowa is a good person, like down to earth. In particular, two Army buddies of mine, Kirk and Dan, they're two of the most down to earth, honest family men I've ever known. Maybe you're thinking that sounds good to you. Maybe you want to be around good people like that. Before you move, you should probably watch my top 10 reasons not to move to Iowa. Number 10. Excitement doesn't exist. When it comes to excitement, Iowa has none, unless you enjoy tractor pulls, corn mazes, and cow tipping. This is a typical Saturday night in Iowa. And by Iowa standards, this party is off the hook. Number 9. Deer. You will hit or have a near miss with a deer in Iowa. It's just a matter of time. Des Moines is Iowa's largest city and has about 215,000 residents. That's not a big city. Iowa has a lot of open land and highways where deer like to run and jump in front of cars, which if you know anything about cars, you know they travel kind of fast and are made of hard things. Deer rarely win in a head-to-head battle with a car, maybe a Prius. Always drive cautiously and keep your eyes open for deer. And before you tell us how you've lived in rural Iowa since the 1820s and you've never hit or even seen a deer but were once bit by a shark in a local swimming hole, stop typing. Nobody believes you. Number 8. Fried foods. Iowans love fried foods. Everybody that's a true Iowan owns a deep fryer. And that may account for Iowa's staggering obesity rate of 32%. And it's not just at home. If you're a health-conscious person, take a trip to the Iowa State Fair. It'll be like watching a Stephen King movie. It'll be a little scary, and you won't be able to quit talking about it for years and years. They serve everything deep fried at the Iowa State Fair. They serve butter on a stick that's deep fried shrimp corn dogs, and then they have the ultimate bacon brisket bomb. This $7 treat features 8 ounces of beef brisket mixed with melted jalapeno cheese and seasonings, and then they wrap it in bacon. It's smoked and coated with a homemade sweet chili barbecue sauce, and then they deep fry it. You know what? I think I just gained 5 pounds talking about that. What the hell? Never record with your phone sitting next to you. Damn you, Siri. You're interrupting my recording. Number 7. Pigs. Iowa produces more pigs than any other state in the country. The population of pigs outnumbers humans by almost 17 million. That brings on some serious problems, one of which is contaminating the groundwater with their waste. Which, in all fairness, the state has made some changes in recent years to improve that situation. These people love pigs so much that they hold the Blue Ribbon Bacon Festival each year in Des Moines, where they crown a bacon queen, a pork queen, and a pork princess. Now, I'm not sure, but I imagine to win one of these titles, you need to be in that 32% obesity bracket. I could be wrong. Number 6. Allergies. Due to Iowa's crazy amount of farmland, the state is like an allergy hotspot. Springtime here is torture for allergy sufferers. Walk down the streets of Des Moines and you'll think everyone's crying like they just found out their deep fryer broke or something. Number 5. Flat lands. Have you ever heard of anyone going skiing in Iowa or going on a hike in Iowa? There's a reason for that. It's flat. Almost 92% of the state is farmland, which means that space is mostly flat land. Sure, you can have a hoot getting lost in a cornfield, but not getting lost in a forest. The state's highest point is just over 1,500 feet, and it's called Hawkeye Point. This state is flat, like my stomach was when I was 19 years old. Now my stomach is more like the Rockies, like a good Colorado thing. I miss being 19. I don't miss going to Iowa. Moving on. Number 4, Tornado Alley. Tornado Alley is a scary section of the country that gets tornadoes. As if the name Tornado Alley already didn't tell you that. If you want to see a tornado, which I don't recommend you do, move to Iowa. You're eventually going to see a tornado, and you'll be hunkered down in your basement hoping it passes your neighborhood. Maybe not the entire neighborhood. You'd be okay with that house that has the cars on blocks on the lawn getting flattened. Every neighborhood has one. Number 3, town names. If you ever do move to Iowa and you want to let everyone know that you're not from the Hawkeye State, whip out a map and start saying the names of the towns you find. It's like some dude that was into tongue twisters named all these places. Now, I'm not going to say them, I'm just going to show them to you so you can judge for yourself. I know they're Native American names for the most part, but come on, make it a little easier on us. Number 2, winters are brutal. If you move to Iowa in the summer, make sure you have a snow shovel by October, or the number of someone who does have a snow shovel. Iowa has pretty harsh winters. It generally always snows. You're probably not going to escape it, ever. There will be snowstorms, ice storms, and don't be surprised if the highways start getting shut down. This happened a couple years ago here in Portland. People actually slept in their cars, and in some cases pushed them off the side of the road and walked home. That's never fun. Sometimes harsh winters send people back to where they came from after one snowstorm. And before you do, stop typing. Nobody wants to hear the one-off fact about how last year you only had 2 days of snow and it was just a couple of dustings. Just stop. And number 1, floods. Floods are another natural disaster that Iowans are no stranger to. Thankfully, floods aren't super common, but when it happens, it's bad. Homes, businesses, cars, trucks, farms, roads, they get destroyed in a good flood. It's not uncommon for people to lose everything in a flood. Nothing like moving to a new state, and about the time you're all settled and everything's going good, a flood washes all your crap away. Be aware, be safe. If they give warnings on the news that a flood's coming, make sure you just leave the area. Floods are no joke. I've seen a couple floods, and they're bad. I'd look into flood insurance, too, if you can get it. All right, let's head on up to Wisconsin, one of my all-time favorite states. I think probably one of my favorite cities to visit is Madison, Wisconsin. It's a great city. If you ever get a chance, go there during, and not the harsh part of winter, they start having festivals. There's always a good festival. It's a college town, so there's always something to do. Wisconsin is a great state, and I think Madison is one of the best cities we have in this country. Let's take a look at Wisconsin. What is going on, everyone? It's time to listen to the subscribers and do a requested video. Now, this state gets requested a lot. A whole lot. I wasn't sure why. I mean, I've been to Wisconsin a couple dozen times in my life, and I've enjoyed the people and the state. The only negative experience I've ever had in the Badger State was the road trip with an ex-girlfriend I talked about in past videos. Well, that started in the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I found it odd that so many people wanted me to do a worst of video. And after doing the research and reading up on a bunch of things, I think I know why. You people are messing with me. There isn't much going on that's wrong in this state. They don't lead the nation in many negative categories. I actually got to the point where I had to call some friends that have lived there for years. 3 to be exact. One from Racine, one from Madison, and another one from Egg Harbor, which is up north. That one's past Green Bay. They all told me the things they think people should know before they come to the land of cheese. So before you willingly relocate to a place where people actually attend football games with cheese on their heads, you should watch my top 10 reasons not to move to Wisconsin. Number 10. Bugs and insects. Bugs are such a problem in Wisconsin, they actually have a law in Hudson that says you must have screens on your windows from May 1st to October 1st. They also have a dust and diamond problem. Dustin is a Wisconsin native who played Screech in Saved by the Bell back in the 1990s. Most people think of him as kind of an insect. Not sure if the whole screen thing will deter him from coming into your home, but give it a shot. Number 9. It's flat. Wisconsin is one of the flattest states. The highest natural point is a hill called Timms Hill, and it's only about 1,900 feet high. Not a bunch of serious downhill skiing happens here in the Badger State. I wonder if this is where all that flat earth nonsense started. Who knows? Number 8. It smells bad. Wisconsin is the cheese state. Billions of pounds of cheese are produced in Wisconsin each year, which means there's a ton of cows, which means there's a ton of manure. I mean, if you ever smelt a cow, they smell bad enough without the whole manure thing. In rural Wisconsin, you can't escape the smell. No way. Number 7. Weather. When it comes to the weather in Wisconsin, everybody agrees winters are pretty brutal, and the snow seems to stay forever in some places. Invest in a good jacket. And ladies, invest in a lot of thick sweaters. Number 6. Water pollution. Wisconsin lakes are in bad shape because of water pollution. It's really bad. This is due to runoff from toxic chemicals used in farms, making some of the water undrinkable, unswimmable, unsafe to be around. Kind of like a bathtub in Flint, Michigan. Number 5. Crime rate. Okay, so Wisconsin doesn't have a whole bunch of crime in most of the area. I mean, some that involve livestock, but not a big deal. They do have one place, Milwaukee, its largest city. The crime rate there is pretty bad. The violent crime rate for Milwaukee in 2016 was higher than the national average by 286%. What do you expect from a city that decided drunk in public isn't a thing anymore? Number 4. No jobs. Wisconsin's not the place you want to go to if you're looking for a job. A lot of recent college grads complain that they can't find jobs in their selected field and are being forced to move elsewhere, which is kind of hard for them. Wisconsin's one of those states that people don't really leave. Once you're born there, you kind of stay there. You might move around to different towns, but a lot of people stay close in Wisconsin. Number 3. Scott Walker. Scott Walker is Wisconsin's governor, and all the Democratic residents seem to hate him, and most of the Republican residents aren't big fans either. He was recently ranked 3rd as the least popular governor in the United States, and is considered to be the second worst thing in Wisconsin behind moldy cheese. He famously said during his disastrous run for the presidency, "If I can handle union protests, I can handle ISIS." Come on, Scott. Number 2. Obesity. Obesity rates among Wisconsin adults are bad. About 39% of residents are considered obese, making it about 5% higher than the national average. Yeah, it's bad. I think it's all that cheese and dairy they eat. And the fact no one wants to go outside and exercise because the whole place smells like manure. And number 1, higher healthcare costs. Wisconsin residents are at risk for type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and other obesity-related illnesses, and in turn have higher healthcare costs. More obese residents mean higher need for doctors, which means someone's got to pay for them. There's an old saying, a town with many doctors doesn't have enough toilets. A town with a lot of toilets doesn't need many doctors. And it makes sense. I think all these obesity-related illnesses and healthcare costs can be fixed with a high-fiber diet in Wisconsin. All right, let's head on over to Michigan. And anyone from Michigan, the first thing they want to tell you is the entire state is not Flint or Detroit. And that's the truth. It's really not. Michigan's not a bad state, especially if you like the outdoors, you like hunting, fishing, and just, being in the woods. This is a great place to live. Sure, the summer you got mosquitoes and the winters are kind of brutal, but you'll learn about that in this video. Let's take a look at Michigan. What is going on, everyone? Let's talk about Michigan. Michigan has a few nicknames: the Great Lakes State, the Mitten State, and the Wolverine State. Michigan touches 4 of the 5 Great Lakes and also has about 64,000 inland lakes and ponds. A person in the state of Michigan is never more than 6 miles away from a natural water source or more than 85 miles away from a Great Lake shoreline. Michigan is a great state filled with hardworking people and amazing natural beauty. Unfortunately, most of the country only hears about Flint and Detroit, and that's too bad. Michigan has a lot to offer someone who's looking for a new place to live. But before you buy a maize and blue scarf and start catching games at the big house, you should watch my top 10 reasons not to move to Michigan. Number 10. Strange laws. Michigan has some of the strangest laws on the books of any state. Most of them are not enforced or have been repealed, and they probably wouldn't be something that would stop you from moving here. It just kind of shows you how these people think and how they used to think. Here's 2 of my favorites. No man shall seduce or corrupt an unmarried girl, or else risk 5 years in prison. Luckily, this one really isn't enforced. You might be arrested while out on a Tinder date. Imagine that, being arrested, cops putting you in your car, telling you should have swiped left, dude. Let's say you do break the law, seduce this young lady, and eventually marry her. Michigan has another law. A law that forces women to ask the permission of her husband before she cuts her hair. Repression in its truest form. Number 9. Obesity. Michigan is the 8th chubbiest state in the United States, with an obesity rate of 28.8%, which I understand. It gets cold up there. Skinny people are not made for cold weather. When I see an overweight person in the snow, I think there's someone that plans ahead. Number 8. Depopulation. Michigan was overcrowded in the 1990s. Now it's one of the only states that has seen a decrease in its population between 2000 and 2010. A good portion of this exodus comes from Detroit and Flint, Michigan. To some people, this is a good thing. Keeps your rent and your home prices down. To people that own businesses like retail and restaurants, this is not a good thing. It's even worse if you're trying to collect taxes. If you watch my Detroit neighborhoods video, you know that parts of Detroit are a frickin' ghost town right now. Number 7. The cold. There's no doubt Michigan is cold. The record lowest temperature was minus 51 degrees in 1934. A friend who grew up in Grosse Pointe told me he remembers walking to school, and as he pulled off his beanie when he got to school, he felt his ears and hair tug because it had become frozen to his beanie in the 10-minute walk to school. Michigan, especially Upper Michigan, are far too cold to be a reasonable place for anyone to move. But if you're unreasonable and like to suffer, by all means, enjoy. Number 6. Unemployment. The unemployment rate in Michigan hit 9% during the recession. It was the 3rd worst in the country. Recently, they've been making some serious improvements by creating jobs at a higher rate than the national average. Right now, according to the Bureau of Statistics, they are at 4.7% unemployment, making them 43rd worst in the nation, which considering they used to be 49th, they've made some progress. Detroit itself is still flirting with that 10% area, which is bad, really bad. The lesson here is, if you move to Michigan, don't move to Detroit looking for work. Number 5. Tornadoes. There's an average of 17 tornadoes a year in Michigan and the occasional water spout on the Great Lakes. Now, this has made my list the last 4 or 5 videos while I've been doing the Midwestern states, and probably because I've witnessed a tornado and it scared the hell out of me. Now, keep in mind, I've been in a hurricane, several serious earthquakes, worked a forest fire, and was in the LA riots during my time in the military. I also dated a bipolar Lebanese Italian girl that had a temper. And I can tell you the tornado I witnessed was the scariest thing I've ever witnessed. Yeah, witnessed. Imagine if I dated a tornado, it might have been more pleasurable than dating the Italian Lebanese girl. Moving on. Number 4. Lazy communicators. One of the first things you can notice about Michigan natives is the way they talk. They like to drop syllables and sometimes drop whole first words completely. They don't ask for a cold one, they ask for a coal one. Coal, like in a little chunk of black rock that heats things. They lost the D. Kind of, again, they lose the D and just go with kinda. Soda, of course, is pop. And they can't even be bothered to say Lake Michigan. They say the Big Lake. Lake Michigan is not that hard to say. And if you read the comments on my Detroit's Worst Neighborhood video, besides these people being a little delusional about the current conditions of their city, they can't even be bothered to type in the whole word though. They keep saying doe, as in D-O-E, as in doe, a deer, a female deer. Ray, the guy who fixed my transmission. Yes, that was a Sound of Music reference. Number 3. Construction season. Michigan residents joke about summer being the construction season because you can't go anywhere in the state during summer without running into some form of construction. Roads being repaired, buildings closing roads so they could actually build the building, new roads being constructed, the Empire building a new Death Star. It all happens between May and August, it seems. One cool thing only Michigan would do, they're building a bridge, and they're naming it after a hockey player. Sure, he's one of the greatest hockey players of all time, but this is an honor that normally goes to politicians or someone like that. Shows you how far politics has gone downhill. They're actually naming a bridge after a hockey player that was known for fighting as much as his skill. The Gordie Howe Bridge will be, I think it's under construction right now, or it's getting ready to be. Number 2, Detroit and Flint, Michigan. Detroit is and has been in bad shape for years. That's all well documented, and me going over it probably wouldn't be anything most people didn't already know. So, no point in doing that. The good news about Detroit is it is starting to show some signs of a turnaround, and really it was once a great city with great people, and hopefully it can pull that out. But if you're looking for a new place to move in Michigan, probably want to stay away from Detroit still. Now, Flint is its own piece of a nightmare city. The Flint water crisis began in 2014 when city officials decided to save a buck and switch the water source for the city from Lake Huron to the cheaper Flint River. Due to toxic water and insufficient treatment, over 100,000 residents were exposed to high levels of lead in the drinking water. Now, this turned into years of lawsuits. Some are still ongoing. Study after study have proven that this was a dick move by city officials. People have been losing jobs because of this, and health problems will probably be hearing about those for decades to come. Now, this is where it gets crazy. In 2017, the city of Flint started foreclosing on people's homes who hadn't paid their water bill in some time. Okay, so they sold them toxic water and wanted to get paid for it? Does that make sense to anyone? This is like going to McDonald's, ordering a Big Mac. Instead of getting meat in the Big Mac, they give it to you with an old sponge, replacing the meat. Then they punch you in the face. And when you refuse to pay, they impound your car. It's the same system. Flint is a nightmare of epic proportion. Whatever you could do, don't move to Flint. And number 1, home values. In this day and age, a low home price is a good thing. Prices have been on the rise since the recession ended, and it's getting harder and harder to buy a home. In Detroit, you can find homes with boarded-up windows for under $3,000. Now that is a great price, until you consider what you might be getting for that price. In life, really, really low prices are something you want, unless, of course, it's real estate or plastic surgery. Imagine getting a tummy tuck for $75. When it's all said and done, your belly button appears to be on your hip. And that's kind of what you get if you're spending $2,500 on a home in Detroit. All right, let's head on down to Indiana, one of the most overlooked states we have. Indiana is just kind of there. I mean, sort of like Kentucky. We never really talk about Indiana on this channel, and we never really talk about Kentucky. Normally because just about everything for that state is right in the middle. Excuse me, I almost knocked over. You know where this glass is from. Leave it in the comment section below. But Kentucky and Indiana, they really, they don't have anything horrible. They don't have anything great. So they're just always there in the middle. So they never make it on top 10 lists, and they never make it on, worse lists. So, two weird states. I've noticed that. We never talk about them. But let's talk about Indiana right now. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back. Many of you on the West Coast may not know this, but there's actually a state called Indiana. Really, I'm not kidding. Today we're going to find out about it. So why don't you grab a drink, sit down, and we'll get going. Indiana is a Midwestern U.S. state known for its farmland, the Indianapolis 500, and basketball. The 500 is held at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway every Memorial weekend, and this to me has always kind of been the first sign that summer's almost here. Indiana is also the home state of 6 vice presidents, including our current number 2 man, Mike Pence. It is also the only place that I've ever had a 6-year-old girl explain to me how she got Indiana in her March Madness bracket and all her friends are jealous. 6-year-olds' friends are jealous over her gambling. I always thought that was really strange. Indiana is a great state for families, friends, basketball, and jobs. Over the last few years, Indiana has seen an influx of new residents. You might be thinking about relocating right now, but before you buy some Jordans and start looking for a pickup game in Indiana, you should watch my top 10 reasons not to move to Indiana. Number 10. Hoosiers. Hoosier is what people from Indiana call themselves. The origin of the term remains a matter of debate within the state, but Hoosier was somewhat of a slang term for people from Indiana. It got popular after Richmond resident John Finley's 1833 poem, The Hoosier's Nest. Anyone born in Indiana at the time was considered to be a Hoosier. Indiana adopted the nickname the Hoosier State more than 150 years ago. The thing is this. These people use this term about themselves without really knowing what Mr. Finley was talking about. He could have been using it as a word to replace the word moron for all they know. Number 9. What's a vegan? Even though 65% of the state is farmland, Indiana locals don't eat many fruits or vegetables. They have some of the worst diets in the country. They love bacon and anything deep fried. A couple of surveys have found they also have the lowest number of vegans compared to the rest of the U.S. If you move here, expect to gain a few pounds. Number 8. Water pollution. Because of all the farm runoff and the industrial pollutants, Indiana ranks number 1 for having the worst water pollution in the country. Now, this is only good news if you're trying to cut down on your mosquito problem. Because mosquitoes are born in water, and if it's too toxic, they might not live. And they're pretty close to getting to that level. If you want to move to Indiana, drink bottled water, or have a decent water filter. Number 7. They're not packing much heat. Condomania recently released some embarrassing data about its customers in each state. They calculated the amount of small-sized condoms ordered from each state. Some of the smallest magic wands in the country are doing their magic in Indiana. Rest easy, Missouri. Indiana won't be stealing your state slogan anytime soon. Stay to the end of the video if you don't understand that joke. Number 6. Divorce rate. Indiana is one of the worst states in the country for marriages. It is ranked 10th as having the most divorces at a rate of 12.9%. I wonder if that has anything to do with that condomania data. Number 5. It's boring. One of the biggest complaints about Indiana is it's boring. Other than sporting events, they really don't have much that appeals to most people. And before you start telling me about the art scene or your book club, notice I said most people. I'm sure a monster truck pool is a hoot, but not a lot of people are into it. And I'm sure the stadium was packed. Just stop typing. Number 4. Women make less. Women in Indiana earn 74% less than men in Indiana earn. That's 7th worst in the country. Being a farmhand sucks, but it sucks even more when you make 74 cents to every dollar your male coworker makes. I know that's broad stroking the subject, but it's a thing. Stop typing. Number 3. LGBT discrimination. Before being vice president, Mike Pence was the governor of Indiana. He's not a big fan of the LGBT community. During his time as governor, he signed a bill that would allow business owners to deny service to gay and lesbians for religious reasons. To me, that's wrong. But at the same time, if I were in that situation, my feelings would be this. If you don't want to serve me because of who I love or sleep with, you ain't getting my business anyway. So, to me, it's a non-issue. Just kind of sucks that they actually put it down on paper. So if you're gay, lesbian, or anything else like that that's not the norm, you might not want to live in Indiana. But if you are in that situation, you probably already know this. Number 2. Meth and other drugs. Indiana is referred to as the meth capital of the United States. This title was earned because of a 2015 statistic that found that about 1,900 meth labs were seized, including one that was found in a Walmart bathroom. The police were tipped off to the lab because this Walmart was really clean, and all the workers worked really hard and talked a lot. And of course, like so many other states, they were hit hard by the opiate epidemic. So yeah, that's something you might want to consider. Now, to be fair, they've gotten better, but it's still a big problem. This is due to law enforcement efforts and Walmart's new strict policy of no meth labs in the bathroom. And number 1, natural disasters. One of the major issues about living in Indiana is the tornadoes, the floods, the blizzards, and the ice storms. Now, these things don't happen all the time, but for some reason in Indiana, when they get one, they tend to be really bad. Indiana has the 3rd most tornadoes of any state in the country. They also have some really serious blizzards and ice storms. The flooding happens every couple decades, but there's been some really bad flooding there too. If you decide to move to Indiana, just make sure you know about these things, make sure you know how to prepare yourself, and be safe. All right, let's take a look at Missouri. I said Indiana and Kentucky are overlooked. Missouri actually is pretty overlooked also. We haven't talked about them much at all. They're the same thing. Nothing terrible, terrible, and nothing great. I mean, I love the Lake of the Ozarks. That's amazing. But yeah, but let's take a look at Missouri if you're from different parts. Yeah, some of them call it Missouri, some of them call it Missouri. If you ever listen to any old speeches from President Truman, who was from Independence, Missouri, he always calls it Missouri. All right, let's take a look. Hey, what is going on, everyone? Who wants to learn about the Show Me State, Missouri? Missouri is a state in the Midwestern section of the United States known as the Show Me State. Missouri is, or was, home of many famous Americans, both past and present. President Truman was from Independence, Missouri. Mark Twain was born in a little town called Florida, Missouri. Walt Disney lived in Kansas City. Chuck Berry is from Missouri. And Nellie grew up in St. Louis. Not that Nellie, this Nellie. It's right here, in case you don't know. Missouri's in the middle of America. It's a flyover state. It's such a flyover state, other flyover states would like to fly over it. Missouri has two major cities, St. Louis and Kansas City. Their only two major cities are shared with another state. It's like nobody trusts Missouri to have a big city on their own. It's like they're bad babysitters or something like that. But then again, if you ever visit St. Louis or Kansas City, you might think nobody's watching it already. The Show Me State is ranked 21st in size and 18th in population. Missouri was admitted into the Union on August 10th, 1821. If you're thinking about heading west, well, I guess heading east also. Actually north and you can be heading north, south, east, or west. It's pretty much in the center of the country. Anyway, if you're thinking about relocating to Missouri, you should probably watch my top 10 reasons not to move to Missouri. Number 10, cost of living. The cost of living in Missouri is pretty average in comparison to the rest of the country, but when you compare it to its surrounding states, it's on the higher end. While you could save a chunk of change when it comes to things like housing, you'll be spending more in other ways, including utilities, transportation, and groceries, which are all a little above the national average. Number 9, no beaches. Missouri's in the Midwest, and it's a totally landlocked state, meaning they have no ocean or beaches. Residents will argue the state has a longer shoreline than California because of all the lakes. However, there's various ways to measure shoreline, and you'll get a different answer each time. Now, this one always cracks me up. It's like they're trying to make themselves feel better about where they live. Sure, Missouri sucks, but we have more beaches than California. This is like some dude saying, sure, we lost the basketball game 98-12, but we were the only team man enough to wear a purple, green, and red accented uniform. Number 8, education. The public school system in Missouri is bad and doesn't seem to be getting any better. The state ranks 32nd out of 50 states with education overall. Only about 37% of high school students score high enough to get into a 4-year college. My son once asked me if college was fun. I told him absolutely it's fun. You drink every weekend, you have all the sex you can handle. Then he looks at me and goes, wait, didn't you get your degree online? I said, yes. What I told you was true though. In my case, I was alone for all those things. Number 7, a lot of head scratching. If you move to Missouri, you will spend a strange amount of time texting your friends 3 letters back home, WTF. The first reason is the pronunciation. Is it Missouri or is it Missouri? The residents say it differently. It changes depending on who you talk to and sometimes which day you talk to them. I know a guy that switches back and forth daily and sometimes in the middle of a conversation. The other thing is Branson. Now, Branson is an entertainment town, whatever, and it's strange how the residents try and convince you how cool Branson is. I've been to Branson. It's not cool. They say it's the live music capital of the world. That's easy to do when you're really not booking anyone worth seeing. The city books acts that are big, let's say, to the retirement crowd. And they're normally acts that probably should have seen that final curtain 15 or 20 years ago. I'm sure if the Flock of Seagulls ever switched to country or bluegrass, they might play Branson. Stay out of Branson. Unless, of course, you're, retired and you don't feel like going to Vegas. Number 6, turkeys. Missouri is the number 1 state for turkeys. In 2016, 11 million turkeys were slaughtered. That's 2 turkeys for every resident. I'm not sure if I want to live in a state where they're killing turkeys by the millions. If you're a vegan, keep this one in mind. You're moving to a state where turkey lives don't matter. Number 5. Oak mites. Oak mites are the worst kind of bug out there. Mosquitoes, at least, are courteous enough to be big so you could see them and try and avoid them. Oak mites, on the other hand, are microscopic and fall from oak trees at a rate of about 300,000 per day, leaving you with itchy red bumps that spread throughout your body when you itch them. Just spreads. That is right. If you decide to take a book, a blanket, a bottle of wine, and your best hipster outfit and go read underneath a nice tree, bugs will burrow into your flesh and you will have red bumps. Like that time that you tried to give yourself a home bikini wax with Elmer's glue. Not that I would know anything about that. Friend told me all about it. Moving on. Number 4. Crime rate. 2017 was a bad year for Missouri in terms of crime. Violent crime rate was almost 31% higher than the national average, property crime was about 15% higher than the national average, and there were a total of around 200,000 criminal incidents within the state. Now, what's scary about that, all that crime, or 99.5% of it, happened all within an area that accounts for about 20% of the state, Kansas City and St. Louis. Now, the good news is 2018 is looking better for the state as a whole as far as crime, so maybe at the end of the year, they can redeem themselves a little bit. Number 3, the Kansas City earnings tax. Once you come to grips with the fact that Kansas City is actually in Missouri, you can get to thinking WTF as you learn about the earnings tax. Residents of Kansas City have to pay an additional 1% tax on gross income in addition to all your state taxes and federal taxes and gas taxes and all that nonsense. They stick it to you in Missouri, and especially Kansas City. Number 2, healthcare. Healthcare in Missouri is terrible. The state has not expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, leaving thousands of residents uninsured. Non-disabled adults without children are not eligible for Medicaid regardless of how low their income is. If the state does expand like most other states have, almost 300,000 residents would be newly eligible for health coverage. And they still say no. It's really weird. I don't understand it. And number 1. Natural disasters. The show me state isn't terribly exciting until you start talking about natural disasters. Tornadoes, flooding, ice storms, Kenny G concerts, and severe storms are very common in Missouri. Residents see at least 2 per year. Hopefully it's not 2 Kenny G concerts per year. Before moving here, you should really read up on the subject. Trust me, you don't want to get caught off guard by an ice storm 3 weeks after moving to Missouri from Arizona. You also don't want to wander into a Kenny G concert. His music works like roofies on men. Oh my god. Flutes, wind chimes. Horrible. All right, heading up to the frozen tundra of North Dakota. North Dakota is a great state if you want to get some land that's affordable and you really don't like other people. Because, I mean, they got Fargo and they got a few other small towns and cities, but no big metropolis areas. A lot of small towns and a lot of just things you drive through and think they're, truck stops, but really it's 2 houses and a liquor store or something. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of that goes on up in North Dakota. It's kind of a desolate state, but it's not horrible. Let's take a look at North Dakota. Number 10. Work commute. Take a look at this. This could be your work commute if you live in North Dakota. Number 9. Your weekend commute. Yeah, this could be your weekend commute in North Dakota. Number 8. Going to the store. Yeah, that looks like fun, doesn't it? Number 7. Commuter trains. These things are dangerous and apparently sneak up on you. Look at that. Number 6. The most bars. That's right, North Dakota has the most bars per capita than any other state in the country. They have 1 bar for every 1,600 residents. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. Now, some people might say, so what, they have a bunch of bars. Well, it also brings up a couple other things. They also come in number 3 as the biggest binge drinking state. They're also in the top 5 for drunk driving arrests. And more than half the vehicle deaths in North Dakota are alcohol related. Number 5. Lawn care. Yep, take a look at that. Mowing your lawn sucks most of the year in North Dakota. Number 4. Bad for singles. That's right, North Dakota is one of the worst states to be single in. Different studies have shown different things, but usually they're either 1, 2, or 3. as in the worst states to be single. Dating apps don't help either. The population is so spread out, you may have a 2-hour drive ahead of you for a Tinder hookup. Number 3. Your neighbors. Your neighbors in North Dakota could quite possibly be livestock. Nobody likes that. They attract flies, predators, and lonely Greek men. Number 2. Your other neighbors. Your other neighbors could quite possibly be wildlife. That's right, wildlife. Wildlife usually attracts things like predators, members of PETA, and lonely single men that still subscribe to Field and Stream magazine. And number 1, it's boring. Yeah, that's right. Most people consider North Dakota one of the most boring states in the Union. That's probably why they drink so much. It's just boring. But here's the thing. That's the beauty of North Dakota. A lot of people that are from, let's say, Los Angeles, New York, Miami, Atlanta, Detroit, Chicago, wherever, if you move there, you would be bored to death because you're used to a different type of life. But there's a lot of people in this world that prefer places just as boring as North Dakota. They look at it like a nice, quiet life, and a lot of people like it. I have a friend that I grew up with in LA, known each other since we were in kindergarten. This man surfed his whole life, worked at the refineries down in Southern California, and then about 25 years ago, he decided he was moving his family to North Dakota. They bought some land. He works on oil out there in North Dakota, and he wouldn't change it for the world. Says it's the most amazing place to raise a family. So, I mean, that's the worst to some people, but to some people, that's the biggest draw to this state. All right, let's slip on down one state and talk about South Dakota. South Dakota is one of those states that become very popular in the last few years. They've got a lot of things to do and a lot of things to see there, especially if you like to be outdoors. It's a pretty interesting state. Been there 2 times, maybe 3. And now 2 times I visited, and a 3rd time we were driving through and stopped a couple places. Not really stayed any time. But still, it's a nice state. I like it. Maybe you will too. Let's take a look at why you shouldn't move there. What is going on, everyone? It is time to talk about... All right, hold on. This is normally where I would say something like the state's nickname. But today we're talking about South Dakota, and they have quite a few. I've heard them called the Artesian State. I've heard them called the Coyote State, the Sunshine State, which that one doesn't make sense to me. They're awfully far north to be called the Sunshine State. Some people have called it the Blizzard State, which makes more sense. They have harsh winters. But the official nickname of South Dakota is the Mount Rushmore State. And that one makes a whole lot of sense because that's all you ever think about when someone says South Dakota. Okay, maybe the Badlands or Sturgis, but mostly Mount Rushmore. South Dakota is a great place to visit and see some sights. But before you jump on a freight train to make a new life in the Dakotas, you should watch my top 10 reasons not to move to South Dakota. Number 10. East versus West. The Missouri River runs right down the middle of South Dakota, and for some strange reason, each side looks down on the other side. It's this whole smack-talking weirdness. I don't understand it, but I'll tell you one thing, both sides come together to look down upon the people from North Dakota. The whole thing's just odd. Number 9. They're not too good with numbers. An organization in New York just released the results of their nationwide survey where they tested no less than 40 people in each state on their math skills. South Dakota didn't do too good. More specifically, South Dakota ranked dead last. On top of that, they ranked last place on teacher pay. I think there may be a connection there. I'm not sure. Number 8. Mount Rushmore. If you've seen a picture or two of Mount Rushmore, there's no need to go. It's really not too exciting. Even if you've never seen or heard about Mount Rushmore, and like you pulled into the parking lot, you were sleeping in the back seat, you got out, and you saw it for the first time, then yeah, you'd be amazed for like 10 minutes. The funny thing about Mount Rushmore is it's more well known than the state that it's actually located in. It's really weird. Number 7. Teen drivers. If you ever want to find some stats to convince the federal government to raise the minimum age to drive to like 20, 21, or 30, South Dakota has more than enough. South Dakota is ranked 49th. South Dakota has the 2nd most teen fatalities in the nation. They also have the highest number of teen DUIs in the nation. That's not good. Number 6. Corruption. Poll after poll shows South Dakota as one of the worst in the country when it comes to state corruption. I did a little research and found they were ranked 8th or 9th back in 2014, depending on what poll you read. Recently, they stepped up their game. I found in 2017, they're consistently ranked in the top 3. They're just getting things done in South Dakota. Number 5. Gambling problems. South Dakota has the second most casinos per capita in the U.S. They have 7.79 casinos per every 1,000 residents. Only Nevada has more. They're also second, only behind Nevada again, for people seeking treatment for gambling addiction. This seems to be the second major activity right behind drunk driving in this state, which kind of leads us to number 4. Number 4. It's boring. Everyone says there's nothing to do in South Dakota but work, drink, drive, and gamble. Even if you live in Rapid City or Sioux Falls, your options for activities are still pretty limited. But I mean, you're in South Dakota, what were you expecting? Number 3. The jails suck. South Dakota is not where you want to do some time. I mean, nobody really wants to do jail time anywhere, but especially not in this state. They rank 49th in the country, right behind Pennsylvania. The thing that makes me uncomfortable is the fact that they also rank 47th in sexual violence in prison. That's a pretty scary stat. Now, if it wasn't for that, I mean, honestly, I really wouldn't mind doing a little prison time. I could catch up on some reading and some sleep, learn how to make a shank and toilet hooch. I mean, sounds like a good time if people left me alone. Number 2, a really sad Craigslist. I always like to look at a local Craigslist to get a feel for the city or state while I'm there. If you see what people are selling, what services they're offering, and what's going on in their missed encounters section, you really get an idea of how these people live. The missed encounters is one of my favorite things to read on the whole internet. If you don't know what that is, it's a place where people can post about someone maybe they saw or encountered, never got the information, maybe go out on a date, strike up a relationship, have a friendship, some sort of thing like that. They always write simple things like, I was on the bus in a green jacket, you had on an orange sweater. We talked about John Philip Sousa. You got off on 3rd Street. I didn't get your name. And hopefully that person will see that and contact you and you guys can talk. That's how it works. South Dakota has some great ones. Here's a couple of my favorites. You were loading feed on a dock. I was lost. I asked for directions and I laughed at you when you said okie dokie. Then you turned red and stuttered and said I smelt like a pine tree. That was the whole thing. That was it. Here's my second favorite. I was hauling pigs on the interstate. You were in a red car having a problem with your shirt or your bra, or both your shirt and your bra. You saw me looking at you, you smiled and pulled away real fast. That's terrific. And number 1. It's pretty vacant. South Dakota is the 16th largest state in the nation, and it's ranked 47th in population. Like most states up this way, they have more livestock than people. And that sucks if you like people. If you don't like people and you're into things like cow tipping and being a hermit, congratulations, you found your new home. I just think such a small population plays a part in South Dakota's other problems. The gambling problems, the teen drinking and driving, the boredom, and maybe even the government corruption, they may in part have something to do with the sparse population. That's just the way I see it. I could be wrong. All right, hitting our last state on this list, we take a look at Minnesota. Minnesota is another state that's beautiful. I mean, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan are just amazing for people that like to be in the woods, like to be in the water. They got more water than you know what to do with, and more trees and open land than most of us can imagine if you're from places like Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Miami, Dallas. You know, just all this beautiful land. And they kind of hoard it up there. I think they need to share it with the rest of the country. All right, let's take a look at Minnesota. What is going on, everyone? It is time to talk about the land of 10,000 lakes, Minnesota. This is one of the Great Lakes states and the original home of the Los Angeles Lakers. For those of you that just choked and spit something out and went, what? Yeah, that's true. From their first season in 1947 to 1960, they called Minneapolis home. And that's how they got the name the Lakers. I mean, there's nothing in Los Angeles that would give them the name Lakers. They have some lakes, but not enough to warrant a name like the Lakers. Minnesota is known as the land of 10,000 lakes. It technically has 11,843, but I guess 10,000 sounds better. This is one of the best states in this country. Minnesota is an example to all the other states on how to be a great state. It was recently voted the second best place to raise a family. Minnesota has a lot to offer. It's just not for everyone. So before you start swimming up the Mississippi, you should probably watch my top 10 reasons not to move to Minnesota. Number 10. They don't call it the land of 10,000 lakes for nothing. If you've never been to Minnesota, you'll be amazed at how many lakes they actually do have. Lakes are great. Ice fishing, swimming, all kinds of things to do on a lake. They're great until you have to drive around them to get to every place you're going. That becomes a pain in the butt. Now, if you're from Minnesota, this isn't a big deal. But if you're an outsider just moving to Minnesota, you'll hate it in the beginning. Number 9. Minnesota nice. Minnesota nice is a saying that they have about people from Minnesota because they're incredibly nice. These people are so nice, sometimes it actually feels a little weird. Now, don't get me wrong. Being nice is something we should all do. We need to do it. But if you're not used to it, like say you moved to Minnesota from someplace like New Jersey or New York and you're really not used to it, yeah, it'll be a little weird for you. Number 8. Your cholesterol's going to take a hit. Minnesotans will deep fry anything. They've been deep frying proponents for decades. From fruit to candy bars and anything in between, they'll deep fry it. Deep fried cheese curds are a local favorite. Now, I'm no heart specialist, but come on, man. This is unhealthy. Number 7. Ice fishing invites. Now, I've had several of these over the years and the peer pressure that comes with them. I'm sure it's fun to go ice fishing for some people. I'm not one of them. They sell fish in the store. Subscriber Dan Leet said he gets invites like this all winter long and gets mocked when he says no. Some people enjoy sitting on frozen lakes exposed to the elements or in a nice little fancy hut if you're one of those people and fish through a hole in the ice. Like I said, they sell fish in the store. Number 6. Natural disasters. Forest fires, tornadoes, floodings, blizzards, Canadians trying to order gravy with French fries. Minnesota gets all the natural disasters, but earthquakes. They do get small earthquakes, but really not a thing to worry about. They've only had 10 noticeable ones since 1860, and the worst being in 1975. The Morris earthquake was 4.6. In California, that one wouldn't even made the news. Number 5. Killer roads. Motor vehicle accidents are the leading cause of accidental death in Minnesota. Now, this one blew me away. I thought for sure it was going to be hypothermia while ice fishing. Pay attention, people. The roads are dangerous. Number 4. Sunday drinking. Until 2017, Minnesota was a dry state on Sundays. I guess they like to relive prohibition one day a week. Since they changed the law, it really hasn't caught on. They did report a boom the first month or so, but it really hasn't affected sales too much. People just have their own little rituals, and I guess this one is kind of stuck in Minnesota. Number 3. Income tax. Minnesota has a progressive state income tax system with some of the highest rates in the country. This is one of the only major knocks on Minnesota that everyone agrees on. It sucks. If you're moving to Minnesota from a state that has no income tax, you may have a serious case of sticker shock. Be prepared. Number 2. ISIS recruiters. Minnesota leads the nation in number of people that have left or sought to leave the country to fight with terrorists aligned with ISIS. Out of the icebox and into the fire. Bunch of numbnuts. And number 1. Winter goes on and on. Minnesota has a continental climate. Minnesota's location in the upper Midwest allows it to experience some of the widest variety of weather in the United States. All the seasons, you could tell the difference. There's a lot of other places, Arizona, California, wherever, even Oregon. You sometimes can't tell the difference between fall and winter and summer and spring. Minnesota, you can. The thing is, they have great summers and brutal winters. People I know that are from Minnesota say it feels like the winter lasts about 9 months. My friend's wife claims she got pregnant during the first blizzard one year, because that's what you do during a blizzard, I guess, is get pregnant, or at least practice getting pregnant. Anyway, 8.5 months later, they rushed to the hospital in the snow to have the baby. So, yeah, side note, that baby's 20 years old now and goes to Arizona State because she hates the snow. So, yeah, she's a snow baby, I guess. But anyway, that is the worst thing about Minnesota. That is the biggest attractor of not wanting to move there. If you don't like the snow and if you don't like the winter, stay away from Minnesota. Other than that and the things I listed here, Minnesota's a great state. All right, that's today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Don't forget to leave a comment. And if you like this video, you probably like one of the 2 videos being suggested right now, if I even put them up there. All right, everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.